Hey TPT sellers, it's Mike Fuchigami. I'm the host of the SEO Tpreneur YouTube community. The TPT search algorithm is kind of like a game. If we can figure out what the rules of the game are, it becomes easier to win. It doesn't guarantee that we'll win, but it's easier to win if you know what the rules are. I'm giving away a $100 TPT gift card to a TPT seller like you. At the end of this episode, I'll talk more about it. But you can go to the Facebook group TPT SEO to find out more information. I have found the developer manual used by Team TPT to make their search engine. If you've been watching this Sunday series for a while, then you know that Algolia has a tie-breaking SEO formula, and there are 8 default rules, of which only 7 are in play. TPT is not using geolocation, to my knowledge. There are 6 rules that have to do with keyword relevance. This accounts for over 85% of the TPT SEO game. SEO means search engine optimization. So that means selecting the right keywords and putting them in the right places to optimize our chances to show up higher in TPT search. If you haven't watched it yet, check out episode number 7 because I give a pretty good explanation of how this tie-breaking formula works. Today, we're going to look at that one rule out of 7 rules that deals with business intelligence data. So this could be business metrics or popularity metrics, because basically the goal of a search engine is to show people what they want. And if you're on a marketplace, you want to find the good stuff. The first 7 rules of the TPT search algorithm is to figure out whether your resource is relevant to what the teacher is searching for. Keyword relevance. In today's episode, we're going to dive deep into what people traditionally think is TPT SEO. Is it page views? Is it earnings? Is it conversion rate? Is it wish list rate? That's the kind of stuff that we're going to look at. Now, I just made a free resource that's basically a game to help us figure out how the TPT search algorithm works. Keep watching because I'll explain how to use this Google Sheet tool to figure out what is the most important metric in TPT land. This video is for TPT hamsters and higher. It's not really for TPT eggs who are just starting the game or TPT tadpoles who have gotten a taste of a couple of sales. If you're a TPT tadpole, go back to last week's episode because the largest part of this game is keyword relevance and showing up for resources that teachers are actually searching for. In this episode, I'm going to talk about what the developer manual says about custom rules. I'm going to show you how to look at patterns and outliers in your own TPT data to gain a deeper insight into how the TPT search algorithm works. And then finally, I'll show you this game where we try to figure out what's cooking in the TPT SEO algorithm. Here's what the Algolia manual says about custom ranking. It looks like Team TPT can set up multiple custom rules. So although the Algolia video talks about there being 8 custom rules, that last custom rule could actually be 2 or 3 or 4 different custom rules. And with multiple custom ranking attributes, the behavior, so the way that the search engine works, is the same as with other criteria. A criterion is only used if there is a tie between all the previous criteria. Finding matching records using typos, geolocation, filters, and so on is only part of what makes a compelling search experience. Algolia's default ranking formula handles this kind of record matching relevance well. The last 7 Sunday episodes have focused on the default ranking formula. And then after today, we're going to start to look at what changes TPT might have made to try to better understand their version of this Algolia search engine. However, ordering on such properties alone, so keyword relevance, undermines the value of thoughtfully ordering results based on custom metrics within each record. When they say each record, they're talking about a TPT product. Each of our products is a record in the database. We know from our product stats CSV that our products have things like total earnings, conversion rate, number of times it's been wish listed, number of product previews. There's a lot of data associated with our TPT product. Algolia goes on to say that custom ranking gives TPT direct control and is often the deciding factor on which records appear in the first set of results. If we go back to this image from the Algolia YouTube video about their 8 rules, each section is a tiebreaker and you have to be in the first group for each attribute. But after you finish rule 7, you're still tied with a whole bunch of other resources. And that's where the custom rule then sorts those results to try to make sure that the teacher who's searching on TPT gets the best product in front of their eyeballs. Otherwise, if they don't find good stuff, they just go back to Google. The Algolia manual goes on to tell us that typical custom ranking attributes includes number of sales, number of page views, number of likes. So for us, that would be number of votes. Ratings, so our rating out of 5 for that product. Release date, I don't think the publication date of our products matters. That would be something more relevant for a movie catalog. Basically, any Boolean or numeric attribute works with custom ranking. Boolean just means yes or no, true or false. For example, has this product sold in the last month? Yes or no. Did your product sell in the last week? Yes or no. Did your product sell today? Yes or no. Sold last month and sold past week are examples of internal popularity metrics that the Algolia developer manual talks about. So we now know from a code perspective, it's possible for TPT to prioritize your product if it sold today, if it sold last week, if it sold last month. And for me, this ties into the store halo effect, where I think if a resource sells, then it gets a temporary boost in the search rankings. And this is how they could do it. Numeric variables are things like our earnings or the number of reviews or our ratings. Those are some of the obvious numeric variables, but I think TPT also has a hidden variable called sales rank, which basically lets them sort all of their products based on this hidden formula. Here's a screenshot showing you what the dashboard looks like for Team TPT. This is just a hypothetical example from Algolia, but you can see here at the bottom, the custom ranking says sales rank. We'll talk more about sales rank in a bit. Let's go back to how the custom rules are basically tie-breaking rules until it gets to the very end of the rule set. In this example from the Algolia developer manual, the first set of tie-breaking rules is this ranking criteria. So it says here, typo, geography, words, filters, proximity, attribute, exact, and then custom. And then in this example, there's a custom ranking called featured, which is basically a Boolean setting. Is this a featured product? Yes or no. You would put that product setting as featured, and then it instantly gets put into the first group because it's featured. And then everyone who's not featured goes into the second group. And then those groups go on to the next level, which is this custom ranking, which then sorts it by the number of likes. So in theory, you can imagine how this final setting could be sorting by rating. I'm not saying that it is, but that's an example where you would sort things by rating, like 4.8, 4.7, 4.6, 4.5, and you can come up with a numerical order. I don't think TPT has featured resources as a ranking criteria, although that's an interesting question, whether our featured resources show up a little bit higher than others. Mind blown. There's always something new to TPT SEO that I hadn't considered. But that's an experiment for the future, whether setting something as featured gives it a boost in the ranking. But anyway, I think here, one of the custom ranking settings could be, was it sold today? So then after it goes through the keyword relevant stuff and it gets to this first custom ranking rule, resources that got sold today go into the first group, and then resources that didn't get sold today go into the second group. And that would be a temporary boost. Now, this sold today could be for a single product. Did the product that we're looking at get sold earlier in the day? But I wonder if this also could be a halo effect, where maybe there's a setting that says, did something from this store get sold today? And if so, show those resources first for a little bit. No one but the search engineering team at TPT knows exactly how this works. And for the most part, all of us TPT sellers here, we're just speculating. So that's why I think the game that I made at the end of this episode will help us compare some numbers. Either way, the developer manual talks about a score or a popularity score or a sales rank number. Here's the example at the bottom. In the custom ranking, popularity or business metrics that will help rank the results, example, score. So I think the very last custom ranking level is this secret score number, because every product will have a unique score number based on the business metrics and the popularity metrics. Team TPT can see exactly why a resource shows up where it does, because Algolia will show the ranking information. Here's a screenshot from the troubleshooting relevance help page, and it shows here the custom ranking, and here's a popularity score of 21,468. And in this demo here, this top resource about Amazon has a popularity rank of 21,469, and that's why it shows up higher, than this second product by Google, which shows up at 21,468. So there's this secret number that all of our products have, and based on that secret number, our products get sorted at the very end. Have you learned something new? If so, can you please like the video? It lets me know that I should keep making content like this, and it helps the YouTube algorithm decide to show this video to other TPT sellers who haven't found our community yet. In this next section, I'm going to show us how to look at our product stats data to look for patterns and outliers that will give us clues about how the TPT search algorithm might work. But before we start, what do you think has the biggest impact on TPT SEO? Is it your product page views? How many times people look at your product preview? Is your product ranking based on whether or not people wishlist your item? And I know of a large TPT seller who basically, when they publish a resource, they send an email to their community saying, hey, please go wishlist this item. You don't have to buy it. You just have to wishlist it. Screenshot that you've wishlisted it, send it to me, and I'll put you into a draw. So some people think that wishlisting an item is a huge boost in TPT SEO. Maybe. Do you think conversion rate is the biggest impact on TPT SEO? What about earnings? Either total lifetime earnings of your resource, or maybe earnings within the last month. Is that the biggest impact on TPT SEO? Or the rating of your product? Do 5-star rated resources rank higher than 4.8? What about the number of votes? Some of us, especially in secondary, we don't have a lot of reviews on our resources. Is that holding us back for TPT SEO? What about the number of units downloaded? That's specifically for free resources. But does that impact your position on TPT SEO? Or does it only impact your ranking if it's units sold for a paid resource? I wonder, and I'll give you an example from today later on, but I wonder if the earnings potential of a resource is a ranking factor. So the number of units sold or downloaded times the current price. Either way, what do you think is the biggest impact on TPT SEO? Leave a comment based on what you've learned from your own experiences or what you've heard in TPT land. I'd love to hear your thoughts. The reality is no one knows for sure except for the software developers at Team TPT. But that doesn't discount our lived experience. We may not see the exact formulas, but we experience and feel the results of the search algorithm. Algorithm, by the way, is a fancy word for formula. But the danger in TPT land is that we all have our lived experiences, and sometimes we get entrenched into thinking that our way is the best way, and it's the only way, and I'm right because I'm the teacher, do what I tell you. And the reality of lived experience is that we all have unconscious bias. I have unconscious bias. I don't know what I don't know, but I know that the way that I look at the world is shaped by my lived experience. I have this theory based on my lived experience that it seems like there's a store halo effect, where if you're really active in your store, it gives a temporary boost to all of your products in the SEO rankings. And so anytime I look at new information, I'm wondering, how does this fit into this store halo effect theory, which may be completely wrong. But have you ever had that time where you work on a resource or you reply to a review, and all of a sudden you hear and you think, oh, because I was active in my store, because I just published this resource, that's probably what just sold. But what sold wasn't the resource you were working on. It was a completely different resource. And so sometimes I wonder, oh, maybe me working on my store gives all of my TPT products a little bit of a boost, a temporary boost in the rankings. And that little temporary boost helped another resource get seen by someone and purchased. Of course, there's no way for me to prove or disprove that, but because I have this store halo effect idea, everything that I read, I then try to fit my store halo effect and say, oh, this proves it, or this doesn't prove it, but it doesn't mean my halo effect idea is wrong. We have to be careful as TPT sellers because there's a lot of gurus out there, myself included, where we're standing on our soapbox and we're sharing our ideas and we become emboldened that this is the right way, but really we're just one person with one set of lived experience. The big question whenever you talk about TPT SEO is really, well, what are we comparing? I mean, we're comparing your lived experience versus my lived experience and what you see in your TPT store and what your ideas are about TPT SEO based on what I've experienced and what I see on my TPT SEO store. But are we really comparing the same thing, or are we comparing apples to oranges? Maybe my product has 10 views and maybe your product has 10,000 views. Or maybe I say something like, I've had great success by putting my keywords at the front of the title. And maybe great success for me is $10. And maybe great success for you is $10,000. So we need a way to have a common language irrespective of the size of our store. Because the underlying formula, the underlying SEO algorithm, all of our resources are probably sorted by this TPT SEO score. And we all experience the same TPT SEO score, except for A/B testing, because the search engine has to constantly try to figure out the best algorithm. So they'll try version A of the algorithm versus version B of the algorithm. They'll see which one got better results, and maybe they define better results by total earnings made by the platform. But if we don't think about A/B testing, then we all experience the same sun. We all have a shadow cast. The rules of physics are the same for everyone. So I'm going to explain this idea about sales rank or score or popularity or whatever you want to call it. I'm going to explain it from the perspective of what's cooking in the kitchen. Let's pretend we're making pasta sauce, and you try my pasta sauce, and I ask you which flavors stand out the most. And you point out, oh, well, it's tomato. And is that basil? Or maybe it's oregano. No, I think it's basil that I taste. And of course, there's Parmesan cheese. Well, if we think of the TPT search algorithm like a recipe, then you might say, you know what? The biggest part of this pasta sauce is the tomato base. And I think the biggest factor in the search algorithm is conversion rate. And then based on your lived experience, you might say, I detect notes of basil. And I think basil, did you use basil to make this? And likewise, you might notice in your store that products with more earnings tend to be higher. Not always, but sometimes they tend to be higher. So you might think, okay, earnings plays a part of this search algorithm recipe. And on the pasta dish, you might say, yeah, there's Parmesan cheese. I can see it. And likewise, you might say, yeah, wish listing a resource is a huge bump in TPT SEO because when I ask my followers to do it, my product goes up higher. I'm going to show us now a way that we can look at our own TPT store to figure out which flavors stand out the most. And the point of what I do right now is so that we can look at our data for patterns and outliers, and we're looking for trends in how the search algorithm might work. The very first thing I'm going to do is search on TPT for the phrase TPT seller. There I am. I'm the first result, Mike Fujigami TPT Seller Tips. When you scroll down, it is called the TPT SEO search algorithm game. It is seller tip number 15, and it's one of the featured resources. I'm going to click on this. I'm going to download the resource. I'm going to click the force copy link. Google will ask me to make a copy of this. It's called the tomato sauce update. So I'm going to click make a copy. Please make sure to read the terms of service because this Google Sheet will connect to the TPT website in an automated way to download your first 20 best-selling resources. If I scroll down, it explains how the formulas worked. And then I see here instructions for how to use this tool. The very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to download my product stats CSV. On teachers.payteachers.com, I can click on product statistics. And then in the new product statistics dashboard, I click on download. I save the file. At the bottom of the Google Sheet, there's a tab called Game Board. So I'm going to click on that. And if I scroll down all the way to cell C31, I click in this yellow cell. I click on File, and then I'm going to click Import. And then I'm going to click Upload. And then I'm going to click Browse. I find my products.csv and double click it. And then for the import location, I'm going to change it from Create New Spreadsheet. And I'm going to select Replace Data at Selected Cell. And then I click this green Import Data button. And that will import my products.csv file. The next thing I need is I need my store URL. So here's my TPT store. I click on the website address and I right-click, copy that. I go back to my Google Sheet. And in this yellow cell at the top here, that says store URL. So I'm going to click on D1. I'm going to right-click, paste, and there's my link. Now, in order for the Google Sheet to access the internet, I need to click on this button up here that says allow access. So I'm going to do that now. And then in a couple of seconds, what it's done is it's loaded my store based on best sellers. So here's bestseller number 1, the reading strategy mega bundle. And then the next one is this back to school goal setting activity. And the third one is this collaboration resource. And if I click on my view your store, if I click on that and then click on the pop-up link that shows up and I scroll down, this is my store sorted by bestseller. And here's my comprehension bundle, my back to school goal setting activity, and my collaboration resource. There's a lot of information and color, and it's definitely overwhelming in the beginning. So let me walk you through it. On the left-hand side, I have this scoreboard, and above the letter C, there's a little minus sign. And if I click on that minus sign or plus sign, it opens and closes this shelf. So I'm just going to close it for now so it's a little simpler to look at. And I'm going to go up here and I'm going to click on View full screen. So what I have here are the first 20 results on my first page from my store in order of best sellers. And then on the right of here, I have page views, product previews, wish listed, conversion rate, earnings, rating, votes. And this is information from our products.csv. And then it also has units downloaded, so free resources that are downloaded, units sold, so how many paid resources were downloaded, and then a column that adds both of them up. These numbers here are units downloaded or sold. At the bottom, I have a little scroll bar so I can scroll things to the right and left. And besides the units downloaded or sold, I then have a column here with the current price of the resource times how many units were downloaded or sold. So this is what I think is the earning potential of the resource. One column here is for the units downloaded or the units sold times the current price. And then the one right beside it is the units downloaded or the units sold times the original price. For example, here I have a bundle and the original price is $84, but the bundle price is $24. It doesn't just have to be a bundle. We can do that with digital downloads as well. So this digital download, the original price would be $4.99 and the current price would be $3.75. The final column here says hypothetical SEO score. And we'll talk more about that in the next part. This section is about looking for patterns and trends and outliers. Because if I look at my resources on TPT, even though it's sorted by bestseller here, this is not sorted by total earning. On the left-hand side here, we have the bestseller ID. This is the bestseller number 1, and then the second bestseller, and then the third bestseller, according to the search algorithm shown on the front of my TPT store page. It's color-coded so that the best number is highlighted in green, and then it sort of gradients down to white for position number 20. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the earnings column just so it's beside my text here. And I'm just using my keyboard left and right arrow keys. So in theory, if it really was being ranked by earnings, I can see here my best-selling resource, that reading strategy bundle, has $28,000 total earnings. And it's at the top and it has a dark purple. But right away, I have an outlier here. I have my back to school goal setting activity, which has only made $3 total. And that's in position number 2. And now you're saying, Mike, how did you do that? Great question. So here's number 2 resource. It's my back to school goal setting activity. And what I did was I took a resource that had 50,000 downloads for free and I converted it into a paid resource. If you watch Friday's video, you know that I'm trying to make $8,000 in August. And one of the ways I'm doing is I'm experimenting with Facebook ads. So if I'm sending the ads directly to this resource, it can't be a free resource. Now, you know I love to document my stuff and I save the HTML files as backups in case something goes wrong. So here's what the resource looked like on July 26, 2024. And you can see here on the left, it has 50,000 downloads. And here's what the resource looked like after that, same day, but at 10:11 in the morning, and it's now a paid resource at $3.75. Well, how did this affect my TPT SEO ranking? Okay, great question. So when I update the front of my store, I save an HTML file. So on July 24th, before the price change, this is what my store looked like. Let's see if we can find that resource. So this is position 1, position 2, position 3, position 4, position 5, position 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. This is it. It's in position 11 and it had a different cover and it was called Anytime New Day Resolutions. This is a goal setting resource that I update every couple of months for Happy New Year's or back to school or new unit, new you, that kind of stuff. And I write a critical thinking letter that goes with it. It was in position 11 when it was free. And then on the 27th, so up here it says the 27th, if I scroll down, I can see that that resolutions resource has got into position 1, position 2. So that's why I don't think it's just based purely on earnings. I think it's based on this TPT SEO score that it calculates based on a secret formula, which we'll play with in part 3. So when you do this, look at your earnings, your purple. If it was based purely on earnings, you would see the darkest purple at the top and light purple at the end, and it would be a perfect gradient. So what we're looking at for outliers, like, oh, this is interesting. This resource here doesn't belong between the resource above it and below it $800, almost $900, and this resource only has $158. So why is it there in the search? And this is where we have to look at some of the other categories to figure out, well, what is it doing well? And that probably accounts for it. Now, if you're like me and you have a resource like this back to school goal setting activity, which I changed, I'm going to modify the number so that we have an accurate units downloaded. And I can't do that here because the moment I type something here, like it's 55,000 and I hit enter, it'll break the entire thing because of the way the Google Sheet is constructed. So I'm going to delete that number just so that all the figures appear back again. And what I need to do is I need to find this back to school goal setting activity down below in my product stat CSV. And I know from doing this before that this is activity number 29. And what I'm going to do is here where it says units downloaded, I'm going to put 55,000. Oh, no, that broke it too. I have to put it in the actual table, which means I need to open up the resource so I can see all of the things. So above the letter G, if I click on that plus sign, I can see more of the product stat CSV. Above the letter M, there's a plus sign. I can see this is where the downloaded really is. So I'm going to change this to 55,000. And now if I move to the right, I can see that the formula has calculated 55,000. And if you click the plus sign above the AE, you can see here now the new easel, here now the new easel numbers that are coming in. But all of that information is confusing. So I'm going to close this tab by just hitting that grouping line, or I could also right click it and I have the option to collapse the column group, which I just did. Or what I could also do is I could just right click this minus sign and I can collapse all column groups so they all shrink together. If I scroll up to the top, I can see that this has 55,000 in the units downloaded. Don't worry about modifying your product stat CSV stuff. Right now, it's just about looking for patterns and numbers. If I look at wish list, it actually does a pretty good job where it's dark at the top and there's slowly a gradient down. So maybe there is something, maybe wish listed is a big factor. Let's look at each column once at a time. If I hover my mouse between the column D and column G, if I hover over it, sometimes I get a hand and the hand just basically moves what's frozen. But if I move it a little bit more, sometimes I get these two vertical lines with arrows. And if I click now and drag, it lets me expand or shrink the title. So I can expand this or I can shrink it. I'm going to look for patterns and outliers. And this is what I invite you to do with your data set. So look at page views. For my page views, if it was based only on page views, I would expect this back to school goal setting activity to be in position number 1, but it's not. Generally speaking, there are darker page views at the top, except for this weird one, right? This 10x reading comprehension growing bundle. It's white. It has 987 page views, which is low compared to the other ones. So then I wonder, maybe there's a bucket, something that groups it. Like, is it a paid views? Oh, maybe that's what it is. Maybe above this line here, this is a gradient here from this top resource to here. Maybe these are all paid resources. And then below that, I don't know, it's going to say they're all free resources, but they're not. There's a lot of paid resources here too. Maybe there's a cap to how high a free resource can get. And that might have to do with what I call that earning potential, units downloaded, units sold times the price. Okay, so now I'm going to look for outliers. Like this outlier, this middle school bundle, it has a white block here for page views, but is there something dark in a different section that's maybe pulling it up? And the only thing I can think about is the wish listed isn't that high. The conversion rate isn't super high. It's not out of the ordinary, but the units times the original price is high and the units times the current price is high. So maybe the page views are low, but because there's that earning potential factor, that's pulling it up out of position. Okay, so I'm going to use my keyboard and I'm going to use the right arrow key just to move all the way to the right-hand side. And then I'm going to move back to the left because I just want to put the product previews, the orange bar, right on the left-hand side. There we go. So again, I see a general pattern where I see more product previews at the top and then it starts to get lighter. And then I see again here, somewhere around 11, 12, 13, I see sort of some darker things appearing, but there's no proper gradient. So maybe product previews helps in the first little bit, but not at the end. I'm not sure. I'm looking for trends. I used to think that product previews was the secret to ranking higher, but now that I don't see a smooth gradient, I'm not entirely sure. There's a lot of outliers there. All right, I'm going to use my keyboard keys to move to the right, and then I'm going to use my keyboard keys to move to the left. And that's just because I want it lined up smoothly. Okay, so wish listed, there's a pattern. I'm expecting dark colors at the top and light colors at the end. And the reason why this reading strategy bundle is so much darker for wish listed than the other ones is because it's been wish listed 1,600 times, and the next closest one is 672 times. So it's darker because the number is just that much higher. So maybe there is something to it. Maybe wish listed plays a big key. I'm going to write that down here, wish listed. Maybe that's like the tomato sauce where it impacts the formula a lot. If I look at conversion rate, which is this light blue line, this is lifetime conversion rate of the resource because the product stat file is for the lifetime of the resource. I can see here, there's no pattern. The best conversion rate is this internet safety and scams, which is 11% for me down here at the bottom. And then up here at the top, my conversion rate for my back to school goal setting is 0. And that's because the page views versus the number of units sold is just so small. I don't think the conversion rate metric in our product stats, the way it's calculated here, I don't think conversion rate is a big ranking factor. Let's look at earnings, which is this dark purple. I have some outliers, but generally speaking, dark purple is at the top and it gets lighter. I have some outliers like this $3 resource, but that's because I turned a free resource that had 55,000 downloads. It sold once today. I think it's this units times current price factor that's pulling it up. And I say that because this get to know you activity has 18,000 units downloaded or sold, but it's not getting pulled up. And one of the differences that I see is in this units times current price, Human Bingo is free, so it's $0 times a bunch of downloads is still 0. Whereas the back to school goal setting activity is now 55,000 units downloaded times $3. Another outlier is to look for dark colors at the bottom. So for example, this creativity challenge has sold 1,500 times, enough to be a little bit of a shade of purple. And it's surrounded by resources that are shaded white. And it makes me wonder, well, why is it so low? What dragged it down? This is where I'm trying to figure out, well, look, the page views are still high. Maybe the conversion rate is low, but there are other conversion rate things down here that are low as well. Maybe it's low because of the ranking. But if I look at my resources based on rating, it can't be based on rating because I have an average of 5 stars on some of the resources at the bottom here, and my best-selling resource has a rating of 4.4, and it's at the top. So that makes me think, looking at this data, yeah, rating isn't as a big a deal in the TPT search algorithm as wish listing. Now, your data might be different, but I know it's probably the same formula that they're applying to your store and my store. So the formula, if we have enough people playing this game, if everyone discovers, yeah, my wish listed is pretty much a perfect pattern, or my units sold, there's this trend here. Maybe it's not units sold because here's this outlier, but maybe it's units downloaded. Maybe it's sorted by the units downloaded, but it can't just be purely based on units downloaded or sold because otherwise my back to school goal setting activity would be at the top there. But the rating out of 5 stars, that's not a ranking factor. And I think that might be intentional because the rating system has changed over the years. So maybe it's not an accurate measure of how good the resource is. Okay, well, let's look at votes. Most of the top resources are dark. Most of the bottom resources, it tends to get lighter. But here's this outlier again. This back to school resource has a dark shade of 43 votes. But again, this resource is free. And I think that's what's preventing it from going higher. Maybe they have a hard rule that says if it's a free resource, it cannot be in the top 10. That could be it. So it has nothing to do with the algorithm. It just has to do with the rule. Oh, yeah, that could be it too. So then it makes me wonder, can you ever have a resource that's higher in the top 10? I don't know. But these are the kinds of questions that we can start to figure out or that we can start to ask. If I look at units downloaded, I have 2 resources here that were free resources and had tons of downloads. If I look at units sold, so the number of units purchased, I kind of see a gradient. Sometimes I forget what a smooth gradient looks like. So then I have to look over here to the bestseller one because that's the example of a perfectly spaced gradient. Let's look at resource 11, which is this 10x resource. It's kind of a lighter color that seems out of place with the numbers beside it. So maybe units sold is like basil, or oregano. It's an indicator in the formula, but it's not as big of a factor as tomato sauce. So I'm going to write on my paper here, units sold. And then I have units downloaded or sold, which is those two columns added together. And there must be something preventing my back to school goal setting activity from getting to the first place because it has such a big head start with the number of units downloaded compared to my reading bundle. And the final column, hypothetical SEO score, we'll talk about in the third part of this video. So on my piece of paper, when I can see this whole color spread, basically the pattern should be darkest colors at the top and then smoothly gradient down to light or white at the bottom. And I see that pattern with wish listed, definitely. Kind of with, it's hard to tell with units current price because that 206,000 number is so large, it just makes all the other colors, the gradients, harder to see. The point of this tool is for us to figure out on our own, you know what? People say conversion rate is the issue, but I don't think it is. It's not a big factor here. I think wish listed might be the issue, but it's hard for me to tell because there are big jumps between my numbers. I'm hoping that maybe you'll have different numbers. And then if we start to look at the patterns, we might start to figure out, hey, it looks like rating has very little to do with the overall TPT search algorithm. If I went to you and I said rating has nothing to do with TPT search, you would say, no, that's impossible because all the bestsellers have those 4.9s. But yeah, so I'm curious to see what your numbers look like. If you've learned something new, can you please share this video with your TPT seller friends and your TPT seller communities? I think this is the starting part of a conversation because maybe some of the things that we stress out about aren't a big deal as much as we think they are. So if ratings aren't really a big deal, I mean, yes, it's bad from a sales psychology perspective because if there's a low rating, people might not buy that resource. But then they also get an opportunity to see how you respond to a low rating. And how you respond is just as important because that's a signal to a potential buyer. They give excellent support and you can tell if someone leaves a bad review and it's unjustified. But what if it turns out that rating doesn't have an SEO impact? I don't know. This is where we have to crowdsource and have some conversations. We're trying to create a critical mass of informed conversations about TPT SEO in the seller community because a rising tide helps all boats in the harbor. So if you learned something new, please share the video on Facebook or the TPT forums or in your communities. All right. In this third part of the video, I've come up with a game for us to play to learn how search algorithms work. And we're going to try to figure out what's cooking in TPT's kitchen. Earlier, I showed you this dashboard from the Algolia manual, where they're able to see for every result in a search query, they're able to see what the custom ranking popularity score was, assuming there's a popularity score is. I'm assuming that they have an SEO score that they're calculating based on a secret formula, and they sort all of the results based on this popularity ranking or SEO rank or whatever you want to call it. So the game is we're going to try to guess the TPT search algorithm formula. And we're going to start with our pasta sauce example. So assume that I have a gram of tomato sauce, a gram of basil, and a gram of cheese. And the question is, how many grams of each ingredient do I need to recreate this pasta sauce? You might say, okay, you need 1,000 grams of tomato sauce, but you only need 5 grams of basil. Is that a lot? 5 grams of basil? Can someone leave a comment? Clearly, I don't cook and I'm just coming up with things. So 5 grams of basil. Let me know if that's ridiculous or if that's reasonable. And then you might say, okay, we need 100 grams of cheese, which again, I have no idea. I'm just coming up with numbers. So if we were to take this back into our search algorithm, then I might say, okay, in my formula, I'm going to take your conversion rate and multiply that by 1,000. And I'm going to take your amount of earnings and multiply that by 5. And then I'm going to take your wish list, the number of times your resource has been wish listed, and I'm going to multiply that by 100. I'm going to add that all together to come up with, let's call it SEO score. So let's tinker. Let's see if we can figure out the proportions of ingredients. Above the letter C, there's a plus sign. I'm just going to open up that tab. And now I can see I have a score out of 20. And I have a whole bunch of hints here that say try again. Okay. And then I have my hypothetical SEO score, which are all 0 right now. It says 0%, and that makes sense. 0 out of 20 is 0. And then there's a blank progress bar. And the instructions here, so basically in these yellow cells above the row, above the column headings, there's a spot that I can put in a number. And the number can be positive or negative. It can be large or small, like 1 or 1,000 or 10,000. You can put whole numbers or you can put decimals, 0.5. And if you don't think it impacts the search algorithm at all, you just leave it blank. So let's say I thought that the ranking was based purely on my earnings. So above the earnings, I'm going to put the number 1 and I'm going to hit enter. And all of a sudden on the left-hand side, what it's basically done is it's done earnings times 1, so $28,315.39 times 1. And my score is now 28,315 and 0.4. In this game, I have figured out the correct order 12 times because there are 20 resources. So how does this game figure out if something is correct or not? Basically, the top number should be the largest number, which is 28,000. And then the second number, the number below it, has to be lower than the previous number because it's decreasing. So in this case, it's $3 and that's lower. So the hint says, yes, you've got this right. But then the third number should be less than $3, but it's not. So that's why it says try again. So I get no points for that. And likewise, my fourth resource, it says 15,692. So this number, it should be less than the number before, but it's not. So it gets try again. So 12 divided by 20 is a score of 60%. And you can see the progress bar has shown up here. Well, let's say I think it's actually not earnings. I think it's actually the formula is double the earnings, right? So then the numbers become doubled on my SEO score. Or if I think, you know what, it has nothing to do with earnings, then I just go to that 2 and I delete it. Now, I think wish listed, it has to do with wish listed. So I'm going to put a 1 in my wish listed column. And I can see I've got 13 out of 20. So my score is 65% here. So then in this game, I might decide, you know what, maybe it's wish listed plus product previews. So I'm going to put a 1 in the product preview side. Ooh, I didn't actually know that would get higher, but now I'm even closer. So now I'm looking for outliers like this. Try again. This fun citizenship one, it's 2. The score, my SEO score is 2,914. My teamwork activity score has to be higher. So what does my teamwork activity score have that my citizenship resource doesn't? It has more units sold. Nope. Citizenship here is 739. Nope, that's not it. No, there's nothing. You know what it might be? It might be that, and I know collaboration has sold recently. So maybe this is an example where collaboration should normally be lower, but because it sold in the last month, it's higher, where citizenship hasn't sold last month or last week. So maybe that's why it doesn't get a boost. We'll never be able to get the entire formula just exactly right, but we'll be able to figure out some general trends about what matters and what doesn't matter. Well, just for fun, let's say I put page views as part of the SEO formula, and I'm going to put 1 unit of page views in here. So now I go back down to the 13 out of 20 because this top resource has to be the highest. Well, my wish listed here is way higher for this reading strategy resource. So maybe it's not multiplied by 1. Maybe I'm going to multiply by 5, right? So I'm going to try to keep on increasing this wish listed number until I can get a hypothetical SEO score that's higher for for resource 1 than compared to resource 2. So maybe it's not 5, maybe it's, I don't know, let's say 50. Yeah, so there we go. So when I make wish listed worth 50 times the number, then my first 3 numbers work out, but then I have this first week of school. So that's the game, right? Where we tinker, we start to add things around. Now, couple things. If I want to clear the board, I'm just going to delete everything, all these things in the yellow cell until I get to 0%. There's an option here to use a logarithmic scale in the formula. And in fact, the Algolia developer manual suggests using a logarithmic scale. Here's an example. For wish listed, I'm going to put a number 1 in the yellow cell, and I can see that the hypothetical score is 1672. Ooh. I wonder if my ads are working because I just sold a growth mindset bundle, which is an upsell from that back to school goal setting activity that I'm advertising. Maybe my ad campaign is working. It's hard to say. I wish I had the confidence to know how long to run the ads for. All right, if I figure out the logarithm of 1672, the answer is 3.2. And if I click this check mark beside use a logarithmic scale in the formula, it then applies a logarithm. It then figures out that logarithm of 1672. And these are all logarithms now. Flipping on this logarithm doesn't change the order of the numbers for this single category, but it will change the ranking for the whole formula. So let's just put in some numbers here. And if you're curious to see how it changes the formula, there's a plus sign above the AL. And that lets us see what the SEO score would be for the regular way and the logarithmic way. And you can see that the order might change slightly. So if I use the logarithmic scale, the score goes down to 10. If I don't use logarithms in the formula, then my score goes up to 12. The goal isn't to figure out the exact formula, and it's impossible to do that because there are probably multiple custom rules that are grouped into categories and then need a tie-breaking rank. This SEO score is probably the last custom rule. This whole tinkering exercise is to help us come up with a more informed decision about what has the biggest impact on TPT SEO. Have you learned something new? This is a kind of place where we test theories out about what we hear on TPT land. So if you like this kind of deep analysis, please subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out. If you've already subscribed, please turn the notifications on because you don't want to miss out on opportunities where you might win cool stuff. I am giving away a $100 TPT gift card to one TPT seller. So there's only one prize. It's random. What would you do with a $100 TPT gift card? If you're still in the classroom, maybe you use it to buy resources. Maybe you buy fonts or clip art, or maybe you break it up into 10 $10 gift cards and you give those gift cards away to your teacher community. I don't know. It's up to you. All I know is I make around $1 a day from YouTube ads so far, and I want to take that money and put it back into the SEOtpreneur communities. So we have a Facebook group. It's called TPT SEO Data Secrets by SEOtpreneur. Looks like this. And if you scroll down, here's the post with the information about the $100 gift card giveaway. Hey TPT sellers, want a $100 TPT gift card? Play the free TPT search algorithm game, and there's a link to download it directly for free. Comment on this post and copy paste your screenshot. And then it says see Mike's example below. So I'll do that in a second. One screenshot will be randomly selected to win the $100 gift card. The contest ends during the August back to school sale that's coming up in 2024. Once the dates are announced, I'll put a proper date in here. And of course, terms and conditions apply. So if you want to enter, and I highly suggest you do because very few people enter my contests. How do you take a screenshot? Well, Mike, I'm not going to share my products.csv file in a Facebook group. That's crazy. Yeah, you don't have to share your products.csv file. At the very bottom, there's a tab called Screenshot, and it shows a game card like this. So I got a score of 15 out of 20. It shows the hypothetical SEO score. It doesn't show your actual products.csv file. And then it shows the numbers that you put into the yellow cells when you were tinkering around with the formula. And visually, right away, I can see that Wishlisted pretty much accounted for so much of this formula. And then product previews counted for 1. So this is what I'm going to take a screenshot of. On my keyboard, there's literally a key that says print screen. So I'm going to click on that, and then I'm going to click and drag this box. There we go. And then in the Facebook group post, I'm going to reply. Here's my screenshot. And if I go Control V, oh, I bet you can go right click paste. Did that work? Yeah, see, it just pasted it in. I don't even have to save the file. That's crazy, right? Here's my screenshot. And then I'll add a comment. It looks like wish listing resources was the biggest factor in my search algorithm formula. The screenshot is the entry. No one has entered yet because I'm not eligible to win. Let's hit submit. And there we go. There's my entry if I was allowed to enter. If you're worried about privacy, then just turn that logarithm setting on so there's no way to figure out what your page views or your wishlisted numbers are like. And if you have any questions, just ask on that Facebook post. I'm excited to see the kinds of conversations and patterns and outliers that we discover. Next week, I still have a Sunday SEO secret video. We'll just look at a different part of the Algolia search manual. My name's Mike Fuchigami. This is the SEOtpreneur YouTube community. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. I appreciate it. Bye-bye now.